I have one problem with Joe Frost on Britain's Killer Kids, and that it's not long enough. The first series was released in 2017, it's only a 4-parter, and that's it. No word of there being any more as far as I can tell. So that's a massive shame, because I became quite addicted to this. Actually, I don't have any real problems with it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It has to be watched to be believed. So I'm going to just mention, kind of very briefly, the 4 children and roughly what happens, because these are all true stories of children who have committed murder. And the only other thing that I'd hoped for is that I'd really hoped for really young children, like 5-6 years old. We do know at least 10-year-olds have committed murder before, so I was expecting younger children rather than teenagers and a preteen. But nevertheless, it's still really fascinating. And basically, in each episode, it's about an hour long, give or take. Jo, who is Super Nanny, if you aren't aware, she's obviously, she's not just some random celebrity they've plucked to present this, which happens quite a lot. She's got decades of experience with, I was going to say child psychology. I'm not sure what her official background is. If she trained as a social worker or a psychologist, I'm not sure, so I won't try and claim anything. But she's obviously got a lot of experience and she knows what she's talking about. She is talking to people who were involved in the case, reporters at the time, and on a few instances, people who knew the victim or the murderer at the time. I would have liked to have seen the murderers themselves giving interviews. I don't know if it's something they didn't want to do, weren't allowed to do, or where the murderers didn't want to do that. I'm not sure. But obviously they are all adults now at the time. I believe they would have been all adults at the time of recording. So I would have loved to have heard their views and why they did it. But other than that, it's brilliant. We have some reconstructions and it's not that graphic. It's not that gory. And I think maybe because we're dealing with children, it's not as in your face. So there are 4 people, and I will kind of brush over each of them very briefly. I'm not going to spoil too much because I think you need to watch it to get a real feel for these cases and how emotional they are. But I will say it went in order of quality. So we had the first case was good, second great, third was unbelievable, and the fourth actually made me cry. So it definitely, there's nothing anticlimactic about this. So the first one is Daniel Bartlam, who murdered his mother. Like, that's insane. And it kind of looks at why he would do that. And I guess it's not that hard to believe. The teenage mind is still developing. It's very easy to become very agitated, as I'm sure we're all aware. And if a mother just keeps trying to control their teenage son and they want to be released from that, it's very easy to just flip and lash out. We do get to hear from his stepfather, and he gives a very emotional recount of this, and I think he added real value to this account. So I'm really pleased that he was involved in this. The second is James Fairweather, who is described as being Britain's youngest serial killer. He killed a father who was disabled or in recovery from a serious injury, and he also killed a girl as well. And it's weird to think that he could do it once. The fact that he can do it again means that even if it was an accident, or he'd acted in a blackout rage and he didn't know what he was doing, it kind of suggests that he didn't really feel anything negative about it afterwards, and that's what's scary. Third one is Sharon Carr, and this one just, it messed with my mind. So Sharon Carr was 12 or 11 when she committed this murder, and she murdered an 18-year-old hairdresser. And the fact that a 12-year-old can murder an 18-year-old is really quite worrying, because that's not supposed to happen at all. That's not how it works. And it really goes quite deep into her background, more so than any of the others. It looks at her, kind of how she grew up. She grew up, I won't spoil it too much, but she grew up in poverty, and then later in life they were able to move to a better area and have a better state of life, and her mind just was not straight. And it does look a little bit at how that could have caused her mind to lash out and react in the way that it did, but you could tell straight away that there's something inherently wrong with her. It's not just somebody being nasty for the sake of it. I feel like there's a mental illness there, and of them all, I would have loved to have heard from her. The fourth one and the last one is Michael Hamer. This one really played on the emotions with the benefit of a photograph of the victim. Michael Hamer murdered a young 11-year-old. He was a 15-year-old. He murdered a year 7. And they used photos of this little boy. And I think, to be honest, I think he's younger than 11 in the photo. But they made him look just so adorable and so sweet. And the little boy's called Joe. And what made it worse is Joe had cystic fibrosis. He was already vulnerable in that sense, and he just looked so sweet and innocent, and he seemed like just a really good kid, an 11-year-old boy. And Hamer manipulated him, and, well, I won't kind of say how it came about or what happened, but it's tough. It's difficult to watch, and it's very emotional. And what makes it worse is that this could have all been resolved and saved and prevented. Getting a little emotional because of one moment. One moment, something happened. Somebody couldn't intervene when they could have done, and he died. And it's just, if that moment hadn't happened in the way it did, he'd still potentially, probably still be alive. It's difficult, but I say, I mean, watch it, stick with it. It's wonderful to watch because it's a nice little celebration of Joe Geeling's life. Although it was just a life that was cut far too short. Britain's Killer Kids is everything I look for in a true crime series. I love Joe Frost. I've adored Joe Frost since the beginning of Super Nanny, give or take. I've loved her for many, many years, and this is just sensational. Definitely head to Amazon Prime if you haven't seen it. It's wonderful to watch. 4 hours that you will not regret. Brilliantly put together episodes. Very climactic, absolutely. And it will tug at every emotion that you have. But it's worth it.